All right, so we're here kicking off a new customer and walking through the setup process. So I've got Martin, the lead developer on our integrations on the line. So Martin, you want to take us through the startup process where they get the README? Once we've shared that Bitbucket repository with the customer, with their technology team, I've also added them to the Slack channel as well. So go ahead and share your screen and kind of walk us through the process of where they go into Bitbucket and what they should be looking for and the pieces of information that they need to provide us to be able to set them up.
Sure. I think that you should be able to see my screen now. So one thing what we're going to do is we're going to, and I believe you've already been shared access to this. So there are 5 repositories for the code. And that is the.
I don't have
Martin,
the link
can you just zoom in just a little bit? It's a little hard to see.
I believe you can if you hold Control and roll your mouse forward.
Okay, it doesn't work for me, but I don't know if you can zoom
Doesn't
in
it?
on that.
All right, let me switch it to a different monitor then.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry.
If you can't, no big deal. It's a little hard it's real small on the Zoom screen. That's all.
Yeah, we'll share it over there. Is that a little better?
Oh yeah, great, thank you.
All right. So the main thing here is that there are 5 different code repositories that you're going to be paying attention to, and that is that we've got our syncer. This is the general sync mechanism that keeps monitors the local practice management system, and of course we've got 4 separate integrations we currently work within that, and that is Dentrix, Dentrix Enterprise, Opendental, and Eaglesoft. And each one of those are represented here as a plugin. And so each one of these is a separate piece, and there's a central solution that is with the main syncer. And this solution has links to each one of the internal plugins. And so you can download each one of those plugins depending upon whether or not you purchased them and so on, right? So once you have all of those, you can go ahead and compile them. And that said, there are a couple of requirements, mainly for Dentrix and Eaglesoft, but Dentrix Enterprise and Opendental, as long as you work with them to get an administrator password to the database, then you're golden. There's a README file here that tells you exactly how to clone down all the repos. And so if you're not very familiar with Git, there's some commands here in order to help you get that information down very quickly. The next steps regard signing your application with a code signing certificate. So in order to do that, you must use the Microsoft Code Sign tool. So that's already pre-configured in the project, and all you have to do is replace the certificate PFX file with your certificate file, and these should be at the solution directory, or rather one directory above the solution, which in this case we cloned as sync client. And so what you do is you basically put these 2 files in a directory above the solution, and then they will automatically get invoked on by the solution when you call it up. And that will sign your application. Now that said, client signatures or code signing certificates and signatures on your files are required for 2 parts. And that is part 1 is to identify to us within the local code that each plugin is actually ours and we should load it. That prevents you from having to worry about security issues of somebody playing some sort of like a man-in-the-middle attack on your application. And making sure that we validate the signature of both the main application as well as the plugin we're loading to make sure they're sourced from the same vendor. And then likewise, we actually are required to have that signature in place in order to communicate with the Dentrix database system. And so when you connect with Dentrix, there are 2 additional files that are required, which is the Dentrix User Key. It's a .dtx key file. It's just their proprietary key format. And a create user, which is mostly for accessing databases, Dentrix G52 through G61. And so, if you want to get into the deeper nitty gritty of how that actually connects, I'd refer you to the Dentrix API documentation and or just looking through our source code that actually performs that communication with their engine.
How do we get those files?
Those files are delivered to you as part of joining the Dentrix DDP program. So when you do join that program, they will provide these files for you. And so then you just put them in the directory above the solution and compile it, and it will include them automatically with our solution. And then for Eaglesoft, there is just a single text file that just contains your integration key. Once you have that, then when you compile it, it's just a like a static key that you put inside of your application. And when your application calls into Eaglesoft, it hands that over as part of the authentication process. And then once you're authorized, then that communication can go back and forth. And those are the main external requirements, is getting those couple of things in place. Now, that said, if you're not ready to build Dentrix yet, you can actually just unload the solutions so that those don't pop up. So let me go ahead and bring this over to this monitor. It's going to be a little small here, or a little big rather. And so these are the different data types that we capture from the application, and you can modify your syncer to actually only capture the pieces of data that are relevant to what you want to capture. So what you can do is you can modify our settings file, and there are some instructions in that help about it. But basically, you can come into this file and you can choose to say, I only want to sync patients and provider information and maybe appointment information, right? And you don't have to include everything if you don't want it. But supposing you do, then number one, you can just remove the setting and it'll default try to capture everything. And then if you have a specification, it just uses that as a list to capture just the identity types for each type you specify. There's a couple of things about this that basically the syncer can be reset. So it will take communication with the with your web service. And so what happens is that there is what we call a configuration loader. So if we come over here into common and we go to this configuration loader, we have a series of classes here that basically say this is the path in which the data is going to be submitted to on your URL. So in this case here, we're taking the API path, which is just in this case API/PMS. Now in this case, I've got it as Practice Zebra because that was the last customer I was working with. But this can be your URL. And once you have that specified, then you can go ahead and target whichever endpoint off of your servers that you want this data to be sent to. And so you can take all of this information and update it here. And as far as like what data do we send and so on, you can come in here to our project under DTOs, and there is an example of each one of the objects that we send and the exact fields and their types that we send. So if we expand the properties here, you can see all the different potential properties that we send. So there's a lot of information here, and the intent is that it gives you a leg up in the fact that you can just plug and play and have access to the Dentrix database and get that data to be coming out. And we've already gone through the growing pains of resolving problems with the syncer and making sure that it's running at all times and asynchronous running, batched uploads, that sort of thing. So all of that has already been worked out and vetted for you to ensure that this process is as turnkey as possible, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's the main majority, and I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. As we move deeper into this and you get the source code down and actually start playing with it in order to actually understand how it works out and if there's any problems or otherwise I can help you out with.
I need the URL for the repo and the credentials.
Okay, so Travis, I believe will get that to you.
Yeah, Dean,
all
I've
we
sent
need is
those
your
all
email.
to you, Dean.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yep. Let me just check
So
really quick.
the main thing you'll want to do is it's ideal that you actually create a fork of our of the code repo. And that way you can make your own modifications to it. And then when we add features down the line, then you can import those and take those into your application without removing your customizations to it more easily.
Great. Hey, Martin,
Okay,
appreciate
I
your
got it.
time. I know you need to run, so that was a great starting point. And guys, you're all now kind of in the Slack channel, so you're good to go. The repos have been shared with you. But let me just kind of explain, Martin. You can take off if you need to. They've got a shared channel with just you, Martin. So this will be specific just for Teledentix Virtual Dental Care. And so that's been started there, guys. And you can ask him any, any specific questions to your install. And you guys have all been added to the integrate dental customers here. The product is called, it's actually called RecordLinc, is kind of the technical name for this product in particular, just so you know. So if you're, you'll hear those kind of interchangeably between the different, members of the team. But, the brand is DrDDS and the product is RecordLinc. So that's kind of the makeup of those two things, so you guys know. But that's it. We'll appreciate everybody's time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here and appreciate your time, Martin. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry, I
Thank
have
you,
got to
Martin.
bail, guys.
No problem.
We'll see ya.
Thank you.